Hello everyone, my name is Colleen and today I am going to be canning tomatoes using the Nesco small batch canner, and I will be water bathing these tomatoes rather than pressure canning them. It's a pretty quick process and doesn't require a lot of ingredients or a lot of time. So join me back here in a couple minutes and we'll get started. So the first thing we're going to do is pick out some really firm, nice tomatoes for this project. These tomatoes you could buy at the grocery store, or you could get them at the farmer's market, or buy them bulk from a farmer maybe, or grow your own. But you certainly will have tomatoes that you'll be happy to serve on your plate or to put into your own dishes that you want to have an idea of all the ingredients that are in them. So I'm just using Roma tomatoes because they have the most meat with the least amount of seeds, if that makes sense. And they hold up really well to canning. So in order to can these, I'm going to need to get the skins off because the skins aren't very pleasant. So I'm just going to go through each of these tomatoes and I'm going to cut a cross in the bottom of them. And then I'm going to prepare to put them into hot water. And I'll leave them in there, you know, probably 30 or so seconds, just long enough to make the skin start to pull away from the flesh of the tomato. And then I will bring them quickly over to the sink, which I will fill full of cold water, and so that I can stop the cooking process. So I will get set up to do that and I'll take you along with me as I go. So hang in there with me today. It's not a complicated thing to do. Now I've just got the water simmering here on the stove, and so I don't want to overload the pot. So I'll put in, oh, I don't know. Let me see, I'll have a look at the pot and see what it can hold here. Might have to do 2 batches. If you've got a big canning pot, you could do more than that probably. I think I'll stop there because I don't want it to spill over on the stove. So it takes about 30 seconds or a minute. The water had kind of cooled a bit, so it might take a little bit longer than that. I don't believe so, but it could. So I'm just going to pick up something to transport for the tomatoes, and we will get the water running for the sink. Now after they've been in there for a minute, I like to just test them because I don't want to overcook them. See how it's starting, I hope you can see how it's starting to split here. And I think this one for sure is ready to go. So I'll transfer these. Oh yeah, I think so. That didn't take very long, maybe 30 seconds. And then any of them that I think might need to go back for a moment, I can put back. But that way I have not overdone them as well. So these last 4 are going in the pot, and these are going in the sink. So these are probably one of the simplest things that you could possibly can. And also one of the things that has probably the most value. We use tomatoes in so many things that we don't even think about. Sauces and stews and chili and just so many things. It's a very versatile vegetable, and I know that it's good for us, and it's something that's pretty simple to grow. So it's always nice to have some of these in your pantry. So I'm just watching these to see how they're doing and watching the sink to make sure it doesn't overflow on me. And next I'll bring you along to the sink. Now here I have the tomatoes in the sink, and as you can see, now the skins after just 30 seconds are coming off pretty easily. Some of them might give you a little problem, and like I said, if they do, then just throw them back into the pot for a minute, which I've kept on the stove, and Some of them slide nice and easy, like this one. Just goes like crazy. Some of them take a little more convincing, but for the most part you can skin them pretty quickly using this method. Now if you leave them in there too long, it has an adverse effect in that it sticks the skins to the tomatoes, so you want to keep a close eye on them. This is not the time to be distracted. Any other point in the process is fine, but not when the tomatoes have gone into the pot to have their skins released. So this will take me a little while, so I am just going to carry on, and I will meet you back at my counter in just a moment. As you can see, this will go pretty fast. Well, here I am preparing to put the tomatoes into the jars, and I have these Bernardin, I believe these are all Bernardin jars that I'm able to get locally here in a number of stores. And of course I use the wide mouth jars just for ease of getting the contents out later. Now each of these tomatoes has, well, maybe I'll back up. So into each jar, before I put any of the tomatoes in, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And I use real lemon. It seems to be what's recommended everywhere. And let's face it, it's convenient. It's something we can watch to go on sale throughout the year and buy it up when it's on sale. And so that was 1 tablespoon of real lemon. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, just scant level teaspoon of sugar to each one. This is completely optional. We just like them a little sweeter. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt to each one, if I can figure out where I put the salt. Okay, and I'm going to add 1 half a teaspoon of salt, and a scant one at that, because you don't really need to have any salt at all in these. That is just completely up to you. I like to can them with a little bit of salt. Whoops, good thing I was measuring that away from the jar. Just a titch. Okay, and I'll set that aside. Now the tomatoes themselves, when I go to put the tomatoes in the jar, have that little, I don't know, the blossom end, I guess you call it. And I'm just going to remove the blossom and I'm going to probably quarter the tomatoes, and I'm going to fill the jars. It's not a complicated process. It really takes no time at all. And as you go along, you're just going to want to squish the contents down as much as you possibly can inside the jar, because you don't add any other liquid to this. I guess this would be considered a dry canning recipe too. Because the fruit gives off its own juice, and really you don't need anything else. So I am not going to put a lot more into that jar right there, maybe a quarter of a piece if I had some left at the end, but I'm going to call that one good. Forgot to count how many. I think that was 3 tomatoes in there. I'll be a little more cautious on counting this time. Now, once I have the tomatoes all into the jars and everybody's been squished down, they're going to go into the canner. Oh, this one's going to take more. That was 3. They go into the canner, and then I am going to fill the canner with water. Because this is cold, again, the rule about canning is if you start off with a product in the jars that's cold, then you start with a cold canner. And if you are starting with a product that's hot, like if this was a sauce, then everything needs to be hot. The only thing that I'm going to have that's hot in this whole batch is that I am going to have hot lids go on these. But other than that, everything will be cold going in. They're pint jars. We want to have at least enough water in the canner to cover the tops of the jars by 1 inch. For safety's sake, I sometimes do more than that, but I've never had to do that in this canner. It seems to hold in the water pretty well. We don't lose a lot in the process. Now, the contents of the jar need to be within 1 inch of the top. And in this case, that seems to be working out pretty good. As a general rule of thumb, this ring right here on the jar, the lower ring, is 1 inch. And that's the one that I use. One of these days I'll get myself one of those fancy measuring tools, and then I will be able to measure. So in the meantime, that's the way I've done it for so many years. So we're gonna just squish them down, press them hard. This is one time. It doesn't matter how hard you press them. And sometimes, if you want more meat in the jar, you drain off a little juice. This one's pretty juicy right here. So you don't want the jar to fill up with juice before you've got the amount of meat in there that you want. Meat of the tomato. So I hope everybody's doing good, that we've gotten through the first wave of COVID all right, and that everybody is well and safe that has subscribed to the channel. Of course, I wish that for everybody in the world, but we can all get through it well and safe. I do want to say though that they are talking about a second wave, and I for one want to be prepared for that. And that's why any opportunity that I have to put up a little something into my pantry, I'm going to do that. We were not caught with our pants down, so to speak, because we do have a pantry that we can rely on, and we probably, without a trip to the store, could live out of our pantry normally for a month anyway. And right when the news came down, we went to the store and we stocked up so that we would have fresh stuff in our fridge for a couple of weeks. And really the only thing that we ran short of in the time that we were, the first part of the quarantine time, or the stay-at-home order, I guess, was what everybody else ran out of, and that was flour and yeast was really hard to come by. And so I will be looking for some additional flour and yeast to add to my stock in the cupboard. Just preparing myself a little bit for the second wave. So we have 4 jars ready. I've wiped the rims. I'm going to add the seals to them and grab the rings, and I'll be right back. Now here I have the tomatoes in the canner. I've covered them a good inch above the level of the top of the jar. Now I'm just going to close the canner lid. I'm just going to push it back a little bit because it's close to the edge of my counter. And then I am just going to go to water bath, and I am going to set my time, which is 40 minutes. Whoops, that got away on me. 40 minutes and start. Now, that's all there is to it, folks. From here on, the canner takes over, and you can see the advantages of this fantastic machine. I'm not in any way sponsored by them, but I can certainly tell you that I am loving this small batch canner. As I get older, it's a lot harder for me to put in full canning days the way I used to. But if I can quickly, within 20 minutes or half an hour, fill jars full of fresh food for us to eat at a later time, then I am just happy to be able to do that. This canner makes all of those things possible. So I would urge you to think about getting one if you are at all interested in canning a few things. As I've stated before, this also works as a pressure cooker and a slow cooker. You can brown in it and then carry on to your other processes. It's a pretty good all-around machine. Other things that it can do are work like an Instant Pot. So if you're going to a family function and you've been tasked with bringing the baked potatoes, you can just wrap them all in their foil, throw them, if you're going to put them in foil, throw them into the Nesco canner and treat it as if it was, your regular pressure cooker, and hit your pressure cook button for however long you need. And I think it's around 25 minutes for potatoes that are a pretty good size, and let that cook. And then you can, I might put them a little less time if I'm going to take it with me, and then just unplug the machine and take it with you, and they'll hold warm in the machine for a long time. Also, you can cook the food, any kind of food actually, that you want to take along somewhere, and then you can put it into the Nesco canner, and when you arrive you can plug it in and just warm it, and that too is a fantastic option. So yeah, I definitely am sold on this canner. I hope that you've enjoyed this little video session today, and that if you have, you'll consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. And I will be back with another recipe, experience, or canning video again real soon. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.